Hello, all you beautiful people on the internet, and welcome to the 15th episode of the Saturday Night Synthesis. I am your host, Alex, as always, in the lovely Baltimore, Maryland, and we have got a great show for you tonight. I'm sure you noticed, keen-eyed viewers will have noticed that there's twice as many flashing light magic music machines in the song that Frederick was just playing. And we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to get to know the new rack. You've heard us talking about it, and now is the time. And we're also going to do a little patching. I got some questions about kind of how modules work. You think I'd know it by now in the 15th episode, but I'm learning. So I've got some questions for Frederick about that, too. And we're going to maybe build a patch, which is as, if not more fun than that sounds. So if there's anything you guys want to know about the equipment, particularly the new equipment, put it in the comments of this episode, and we will get back to you. And while you're there, I want you to take your smashing hand and give a smash on the like and subscribe buttons, just because you're mad at your computer, not even for us, or don't do that, or do but don't tell me about it or sue me. Anyway, check us out on Instagram, too. We're at Saturday Night Synthesis. There's some good clips from past episodes on there. Check that out. And now, it is my distinct pleasure, right here in my heart, to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, the founder of the feast, Frederick Foxtrott.
Hey, Alex, I can't believe it. It's been 15 episodes.
1-5.
Yeah,
1-5.
And I think we've been recording for about 5.5 months, and we've been doing the show for almost a year now. And so, I just want to say that, like, I know it seems a little premature to celebrate 15 episodes, but with the work that this, kind of goes into this, I think it is something to kind of mark a 15th episode.
Well, it's not all the time one's harebrained schemes pan out. We're like, we'll make a show and put it on the internet, and then turns out we did. So that's kind of cool.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, like, neither of us have like a kind of like streaming or an audio kind of technic background. I mean, I know how to like mix and stuff like that, but like that's not anywhere close to what's required to do this. So
as we have found out, that is not all that it takes.
Yeah, we are the best. We're not no more self-deprecation.
No,
okay.
No, but I do think, well, right, like you said, neither of us come from like AV production background, but I used to do kind of a performance background. You do music, I used to do theater, and you always remember the shows where there are mistakes and not the ones that go really smoothly. But I think one thing I've really enjoyed about this whole process is the learning. Is like, to do this, you need to do this better, or how do we prepare, right? Like, we've learned a lot of lessons about how you got to prepare to do this thing, and so you got to, on all the steps you got to take and all the things you got to make sure that you do, so that when the recording light comes on, you're ready to do it. And how it's a lot more fun actually when you prepare than when you're kind of going by the seat of your pants. That's another thing we found out.
Yeah,
so.
When you have everything right and you have like the amazing guests who come on and they kill their sets, or like even audience participants who come on with really thoughtful questions, and when it's clicking, it's like really one of the best feelings. So. I'm really happy to be part of this, and I'm really glad that you're doing this with me, because without this, I want to say particular thanks to you. That it goes without saying, but it ought to be said that you are a huge part of everything here, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Well, thanks, Frederick. I really appreciate you too, and I think it goes without saying that you're a huge part of this because you do all the work. I'm the pretty face, is what I tell people. So like we were talking about, that you have that new rack assembly. You made a video of it. Come check it out on the Frederick Foxtrott YouTube channel. If you're a gearhead, if you're really into mods, check out the video. It's like 11 hours time-lapsed into a short amount of time. There's some guests on it. What can you kind of tell us about that process, and what can you tell us about the new additions, Frederick?
After many, I think, years of avoiding the aesthetic, I finally got a black light, and I want to just acknowledge that. But as far as the new rack, yeah, I mean, I really, as you said, go check out that video. It really shows the guts of the Moog rack. So, and how I put it together with a Constant Lab power supply. And Constant Lab is a company out of Slovakia, and One of the things that, those of us who use Moog skiffs know that it's actually, it's a foot long and it's 49, 50 millimeters deep. And so if you're going to put any kind of power supply in there, it has to be very shallow, and you have to be able to cut that bus board into that 12-inch space. And so I go through that in the video in much more detail, and I actually show how I do it. And then I put on each of these modules, and you really get to see the insides of the machine. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to mention. In Earth Modular Society and their Discord, there's a channel that's called Planning Your Case, and I went ahead and decided to do this kind of like in a crowdsourcing of ideas of sorts to see what kinds of modules I should get. And I had so much help and so much kind of feedback that I'm really proud of how everything turned out. And it certainly is what ended up is certainly reflective of that kind of process of us all kind of shooting ideas around. And during the actual assembly, Hex 7 came on and he was doing his own work, but was very happy to give me some moral support as I made decisions on parts to cut and doing it by myself was kind of a harrowing thought. So I decided to ask if anyone wanted to join me, and he was kind enough to do so. And then
to witness,
yeah. And then luckily, Forrestine and Schmooster came around as well, and provided a lot of really funny moments that got me through that day. So it is time lapse, but there are kind of like certain moments that I kind of left at regular speed for you. So.
If you are interested in building mods or learning about them, go on. We talk about the EMS all the time. That's just because they're super nice and cool. So go on there and go to the Discord and ask a question, and very nice people will answer your question. It's hard to believe in the internets on which we live, but it's a real thing. So yeah, they're super nice. So go check it out if that's the kind of thing you're into. But so, the kind of thing I'm into, Frederick, I'm into learning about your new rack.
I'll kind of go through all the modules, but I want to kind of show all the little pieces as well of the song I just did.
Yeah, because I really did notice there's a lot of new sounds in that song that I never heard before. So I'm really interested in hearing where those sounds are coming from.
So voila, it's actually here, and it's such a it's such a beautiful thing. So as you'll note at the bass, just to begin with something I actually did not end up using, you'll see at the bass there's the Mother 32 of my old rack, and next to it is the new DFAM. DFAM is a all analog drum machine that has so many parameters that you can really change the sound. It's also a sequencer, so it can do a lot of different things, but primarily it's used for rhythm. When you hear it for the first time in person, it just is it really exceeds my expectations that I had for it. So I haven't used it yet because I'm still kind of learning it, and I don't want to kind of go into using such a strong and robust synthesizer without really putting some time into learning it. So I've started with some of the modules.
Quick, what does DFAM stand for?
DFAM thank you very much, stands for a drummer from another mother. So kind of going off with the Mother 32, drummer from another mother. It's the second in the series of this style of synthesizer. You have the Mother 32 was the first one. It's of course the semi-modular unit, and by semi-modular is that if you take all the patch cables out, it has its own routing pattern in which the signal flows. But if you want to, you can go in and rearrange. If it hits, where it hits first, what is modulating what. And of course, you can incorporate the sounds from this into other units as well.
So let's talk about those modules then.
You'll notice that that of course have used a lot of my other modules from the other rack, but I'll go through and talk a little bit about all the modules that are new, and then I will break down how the rack itself, maybe even using both sides, made the song, and then we'll unpatch or maybe even patch something a little different.
Playtime.
Okay, so first, one thing you'll notice is the sound of those bells. That's It sounds like. And those bells are coming from right here. It's called rings. It's such a classic Mutable Instruments module. I had to get it, and the reason why I got it is because it's so classic and because it makes those kinds of this perfect
They're beautiful.
Kind of bell sounds. It is a digital oscillator and digital module, so it gives you a lot of different options of how you want to shape and morph the sound. And that's really what it does best. It does like string sounds and bell sounds and plucky kind of vibration sounds. And it's pretty much a straight up oscillator that can also actually, you can put a sound in there, like an entirely different oscillator. It will actually put harmonics and frequencies on there. So it's not just producing an oscillation itself. If you want to, you can put something in there and just like modulate it and kind of give it an interesting glow or of such. Anyways, that's the rings.
And we were talking the other night, Frederick. You were telling me how oscillator is the kind of component on the synthesizer that actually makes the tones, makes the signals.
Yeah, the oscillator is the voice itself. It's literally the thing that is the tone. It goes boo. Yeah, it's just like it's a completely unmodulated, unaffected tone that's coming out of an oscillator. That's what an oscillator is. I mean,
so rings is an oscillator. That's cool.
But it's a special kind of oscillator. So the rings, right? The rings is that bell sound. And I had the rings running through the clouds just as a homage to the classic Rings to Clouds, the much maligned Rings to Clouds signal flow. So yeah, I had like 3 different melodies. I had this one. Then I had and then yeah, so that's the rings for short. And then as far as the song goes, just real quick, the sound of the and I also had a couple of variants off of this as well. Yeah, so that's the Mother 32, and I just have that going through a Pico, an Erica Synth Pico DSP. So that's the kind of the bells and that kind of bassy drone is coming from the Mother 32 and the rings. You might have noticed I kind of also came in with a really kind of strange drum or percussive sound, just kind of cycling through a lot of different sounds, and that comes from the Plaits. And this is another kind of oscillator that produces percussive sounds. Now there is actually 2 modes on here which overlap with rings. It's like a little mini rings that's also in here. It has straight up snare sounds and kick sounds and hi-hat sounds, and then as well as a lot of white noise or just a lot of different kinds of percussive sounds that one would use to make those drum sounds. But what I have is over here I have the Make Noise Wogglebug actually going into the maths, and it's doing what's called attenuating. If you can imagine, I'm sending a bunch of random signals into the Plaits to play all these strange sounds, but in some ways it's almost too much if you just let it go by itself. The Wogglebug can be unwieldy in that way. So what ended up happening is if you put it through the maths, it's a attenuverter, so you can actually kind of choose the range of cacophony that you want to have. And so that was really, if you kind of dial it in just correctly, the Plaits, you can actually begin to predict when things will hit, and if you're really paying attention. And then, of course, you have the Wogglebug here, which has this great kind of freeze button that allows you to kind of freeze it on the modulating kind of pulse that it's giving out. I'll just kind of remind you of what that sounded like. I started off kind of slow and then went fast. So that like I said, you can begin to predict when things are going to be hitting. I should have been pointing out over here. I'll just do it again. So there you see it cycling through the different sounds, and it's doing it in a kind of both random and predictive way, and again, not true random, but for the purposes of all human hearing and potential of calculating of calculating what the odds of the next note will be, it is for all intents and purposes random. So, but you can begin to see a relationship between things, and then because I've narrowed down the number of kinds of sounds it's making, you begin to kind of have a feel for it. So, so that's the plates. I didn't use the tides here at all. The tides is another kind of. It does actually have a setting where you can make an oscillator, but pretty much what it is a envelope generator, and I don't have a lot of experience with it, so I really can't speak to it. I haven't learned that one yet. One thing, as an aside, I must note is that when you put together something so comprehensive as this in such a short amount of time, it's a lot of manuals to read, and I'm a big manual reader, so it's been a little bit of a slow kind of slog to be able to kind of really competently use all these synths. So the next module over here is the Quad VCA by AI Synthesis, and in fact, Abe over at AI Synthesis, usually it comes in a kit and you would make it yourself, but it's an expert build, and I wanted it quickly, and so I didn't want to go through it, so I had them put it together. It's such a great company. I think that it's very similar. I think it's very similar to Mutable Instruments' Veils. It was between this and the IntelliGel Quad VCA, and then this, and I ended up choosing this because I wanted to support a smaller maker who, by all accounts, does great work. And I got to say, this is the best VCA I've ever used. It's just absolutely fantastic. And a VCA is just voltage control amplifier or attenuator. It gives the ability to turn up or down a sound, an oscillator. And then it also, if you remember what I've talked about, the envelope generator, which has the attack and the decay. The attack being how quickly it goes from no signal or no volume all the way to the peak volume, and then decay is how quickly it, or in what manner it goes from the high to the low. And so the VCA has these CV patch points in which you can actually add something like the tides, an envelope generator, or I have other envelope generators that I can use, and that's what actually cuts up the sound into your individuated notes instead of just one long note that will just ram into the next note. Instead, you can have discrete sounds of each note. There's just so many different ways you can use a VCA to incorporate it into the modulation of your. So yeah, anyways, it's a unit that allows you to turn things up and down and modulate it, and it's just a great quality, and it's AI synthesis. The next module over here is scales, and this was such a great module. It's what you actually heard towards maybe the middle part. So actually, I can actually show you what I mean by having. See, by putting the envelope generator in here, it cuts it up instead of... So that's scales, and what that is that I just have this in the key of G, and it's just going through, and it's picking random notes supplied by the Wogglebug is also giving out a random signal in order to trigger random notes within only the scale of G, and then of course it is connected to the tempo of the Mother 32, which is being controlled by the BeatStep Pro. That allows me to just kind of have something going that keeps things interesting and keeps things new and keeps things not repetitive, and I can just kind of flip it on and off, and I can make it longer, and I can give it plenty of like reverb. I was doing... So that's scales. I still have yet to learn much more past this. It's a very complicated module that allows you to do so much, but I haven't spent enough time going through the manual and learning more than what I've kind of already used. If you look through this patch, you'll see the Mimeophon, which I did not use in this patch. We'll play around with it, I suspect, by the end of this episode. But I really don't know anything about it. I haven't gone into it. I do notice that it has a lot of similar controls that the Phonogene does. I can see the kind of relationship between the two modules fairly clearly. But we'll get into that in a little bit. The Øchd, he was designed by DivKid, by Instruō, assembled in Scotland, and it is basically, I've talked about it before, it's just several LFOs that are kind of musically intertwined with one another. And I just have that kind of modulating the plates a little bit so that when it's doing all those drum sounds, it's not using, if it hits that snare again, it's not going to sound exactly like that snare that hit last time. It'll sound a little different. And then, of course, over here, it is also modulating, it's actually modulating two parameters on the plots, the harmonics and the morph. One of the really big benefits of this new rig is that it's stereo. I'm able to have these really rich textures that are coming through in each ear. One thing I should have mentioned, both in rings and in the plots, is that I have things going out in stereo. That's why you're hearing the rings go back and forth between ears, and then the same thing with the plots. And now the plots is not exactly stereo. It's actually two different signals. They basically have two options. You can do the effects of the plots, or there's like kind of a side effect signal that they just give you the option of using. And so if it produces a really great effect if you use one in the left channel and one in the right channel. So one of those plots channels is going through, the left channel is going through the Wasp. It's going through a little filter to give it a little sizzle. And the right is going just straight into the VCA.
And that's the thing, and your new rack has a lot more filters, right?
Yeah, I have a lot more filters because before I was pretty much, trying to use other modules to kind of approximate, what a filter is doing, which it never really sounds correct. Or I would just use the filter that's in the Mother 32. The one thing that the left synthesizer lacks is really just a strong filter section. I corrected that very strongly with this new setup. And so that Wasp filter, it's a very basic filter, but it has such great character, and I really love it so far. The next module that I use is it's a reverb. It's a very airy white noise reverb that is connected to the Erica Synths VCO, the Pico VCO, and that's actually the voice that the IntelliGel Scales is modulating. The module itself is not an oscillator. All it does is quantizes another oscillator. So it allows it to control the pitch of the VCO. And so I have that VCO, which you'll recall is this sound. So that's what it sounds like when it's just the Pico by itself.
And that was like my favorite sound in that song right there, is that kind of like stringy, orchestral, melodic.
It's
I
like,
thought it really like added something really interesting on these textures, on these percussive textures and these kind of electronic textures. To have that, it really caught my ear.
Yeah, it almost makes it sound like the trumpets or the French horn section and the strings are playing their dun, 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 that.
Yeah, like really, like hard.
Yeah. The next module has all these great LEDs. Is the Filter 8 or the Filtrate? It's a really incredible filter that has so many parameters and lets you put out a ton of sound. And I have yet to actually get into it, so I'm not going to really be able to talk much about it. I'm not going to try to use it at all as well. I do think it actually self-oscillates, and you can use it to produce sound as well, and not just filter it. But we'll save that for another time. Maybe the next week or the week after, I'll kind of concentrate on the modules that I didn't use this week, and then.
Well, that's kind of the exciting part of this too, is that right? Like you were playing on your other rack for years, and like getting proficient in it, and getting to really understand it all, and now these are all new, and so like people watching the show, and myself included, can kind of watch you. The whole process of learning more about them, learning how they work, learning of the details, learning how they work together. Like I imagine it's going to be like a legit journey to master it, and it's kind of neat to be able to kind of go on that journey with you.
Awesome, yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Especially with the Mimeophon, it's something that I really want to incorporate into my sound. A lot of the glitching effects that I really like to use. I think this will really open a lot of doors in that respect. But let's real quick, the final module is the Dopefer A142 dual ADSR, and these are just envelope generators. These are, so I can take oscillators and kind of, again, make them put out discrete tones instead of just the constant tone that then smashes into the next pitch. It allows it to go bup, bup, bup instead of buh. It's just a great utility. They're actually called ADSRs, and you'll remember that comes from attack, decay, sustain, and release, which are the parameters that you control. But this is just, you get two of them, and they're really fantastic. So I think that, for the kinds of additions I made to this rack, I think both complement and open up new spaces for synthesis, and I couldn't be prouder or happier with, I'm sure that might change. I'm sure I can get frustrated with something, but so far things are looking pretty good. I don't feel any kind of regret for any of them so far.
Well, it sounded great. I'm really looking forward to doing a patch and playing with that, because that's something that, as someone who doesn't play the synthesizer, to kind of follow along like that is really exciting, and you get a real insight into how it works. So before we get into that patch, I want to let you know next week, Bandit Lou is going to be our musical guest. I'm really excited. Think ambient, think incredible visuals. Maybe go get a visit to your pharmacist before next week's show, or not. And Frederick is going to be May 13th at the New York Modular Society. Frederick Foxtrott is going to be playing a little show on the internet, and I know that's something you're interested in. So check that out. We're going to continue to shill for that for quite some time. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we're going to play it out with a patch. So good night.
All right. So let's go and begin. One of the things I want to do, maybe, Alex, is just kind of show you what I am. Show you the different sounds that the rings makes.
My new boyfriend.
Maybe you can choose something. We can kind of give you a little bit of agency about what kind of sounds we use tonight.
Oh, I want that bell sound. I'm obsessed with that bell sound it makes.
Oh, what is that coming from? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That's the one that we used for the song. And of course, this is allowing the resonance to kind of run over one another.
I love that. Yeah. I was just about to say, how are you making that noise and do more of it?
So you hear that's kind of like one layer. Mm-hmm. And then this one, and then that's another layer, and this is the third. This is, but yeah, that's what we end up using. But so there's that, and of course, just to let you kind of see. So those are the kinds of sounds you have available. It's almost like wood.
Oh, that's cool.
Or like a glass, maybe, or.
Yeah. Oh, that's very. Yeah.
And then open it up, and it sounds like maybe a metal bowl.
Oh yeah, more like a handbell.
Yeah. So let's choose something. You choose one.
Oh, do that metal bowl sound. You're like, this sounds like a metal bowl.
That's this one.
Yep, do that one.
Okay, so just for the simplicity's sake, for the rest of because we don't want to take too much time, we're going to get something going with the scales here, which was this sound.
Oh, yeah.
So let's keep in this key of C just because, or G, just because it's, but.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's just like one note, and then I can do two notes. This is what we chose.
Awesome.
What I have over here that is giving it its rhythm is the Euclidean right here.
All your hardcore synthesis heads out there will remember the episode we did all about the Euclidean rhythms.
Stoicheia.
Stoicheia.
Stoicheia. All right, so that's pretty good. We have that. Let's do a... So we can do like, let's get a melody going. Okay, hold on.
Is it Cults? Might be a cult song. That's cool. Cool. Good night, everybody.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live. I don't give a fuck.